So welcome everyone to this first webinar of the Koshika series of webinars. Uh, my name is Vipul Jain. I'm the founder and CEO of the Advanced Cells Group. Koshika is one of our brand names. Just to give you a brief intro, at Koshika, we are dedicated to production of primary cells. These cells are very unique and very customized. They can be customized as per the requirement of the researcher or of the industry. We deal both with academic institutes as well as industries such as pharma industries and cosmetic industries. Our specialty is that we are able to produce primary cells which are disease specific, tissue specific, or species specific. So any kind of customized request that a client might have, they might have request of a specific disease tissue or non-disease tissue, or any specific requirement of the donor age, sex, any particular requirement of the donor, or any particular SOP or any particular way of culturing cells that a researcher or the industry require. We are able to do that in our GMP certified labs in Noida. So what we are doing is we are starting a series of webinars where the aim is to educate, the aim is to solve some of the common problems that are related to lab work. The webinar today, as you all know, is going to focus upon problems and solutions that we generally face in cell culturing technologies. These, as researchers, as bioscientists, we are constantly facing a lot of troubles, lot of problems when it comes to cell culture. It's not that easy a job as it seems to be. And as researchers, all of you would understand that whenever we are doing cell culture, we have to innovate. We have to do a lot of things that we actually do differently in our labs, and which are not exactly what is written in the textbook. So all of us have to innovate the way we handle the challenges that all of us face when we are doing cell culture. So we have a very special speaker with us today, Dr. Saroop Kumar Pandey. He's an accomplished research scientist at the National Institute of Biotechnology in the Ben Gurion University in Israel. He has over 30 international publications in his name, and his expertise is molecular oncology, cancer biology, and pharmacodynamics. He has excelled in his understanding of drug discovery for life-threatening diseases and underlying mechanism of targeted cellular pathways that can be coaxed further to achieve new therapeutic advancements in oncology. With over 10 years of extensive research experience at IIT Kanpur, he has mastered the art of drug development against targeted oncogenic receptors and opened new avenues of combinational therapeutic approach. Currently, he is involved in identifying different cellular pathways leading to prostate cancer, lung cancer, colorectal cancer, and lymphomas, and further trying to decode the crosstalk between different cellular and molecular events that are leading to cancer progression. The present webinar is intended to discuss different challenges that we encounter in cell culture and what are the advanced technologies currently available to deal with those challenges. Before I hand over the podium to Dr. Pandey, just a few housekeeping requests. Kindly, if you have a question, if you have a comment, kindly use the Q&A feature that is available. Please post your questions there. At the end of it, Dr. Pandey and our panel of experts, which includes Dr. Sachin Kadam, who's the CTO of Advanced Cells, they will try and answer all your queries to your satisfaction. Please raise your hand if you have a comment to make, and the administrators will try to resolve your comments as soon as possible. We have very limited capacity in this webinar room, and the response has been overwhelming. So if you are planning to leave and come back, please do that at your own risk, because the room might not be able to take you back in. During the webinar, again, if you have any comments, please use the Q&A section or raise your hands, and we will try to resolve your problem then and there. So without any further ado, Dr. Swaroop Pandey, welcome. Thank you very much for being the speaker in this talk. The podium is all yours, sir.
Thank you, Bipul, for a nice introduction. And thanks to Koshika to give me this opportunity to talk about cancer. Sorry, cell culture with me. Okay, there is some problem. Somebody is sharing the. Somebody is sharing their. One second.
Is there a problem?
Okay, yeah, no. Somebody was sharing their screen, so now I can share mine. Okay. Okay, sorry for the delay. So thank you all for joining me. So today we will be talking some basic aspects of the cell culture, how we should deal with the cell culture, what are the benefits with the cell culture, what are the major problems coming in during the cell culture, and what are the clinical and biomedical implications of cell culture. So first of all, what is cell culture? Cell culture is cell culture is a complex process from starting from the isolation of the cell from the natural environment, like in vivo, means some tissue, some organ, and then grow them in a controlled artificial environment, which is called in vitro. So why we do cell culture? So first of all, whenever we do some scientific research, what we should do, what should ask, we should always ask why. So that why we are doing this, so that makes your interest in that particular research. So why we do cell culture, how it's beneficial. So there are some major things which is mainly dealt by the cell culture. We can take advantage of cell culture to reduce the ethical issue, which is called the 3R rule. What is 3R rule? Whenever you go for some animal experiment, they always ask you, the ethical committee or ethics committee, they always ask you whether you can do this experiment instead of using animals, you can use this experiment in some other way. So yes, at an extent, we can use cell culture in that. So we can replace the animal by cell culture. Then again, toxicity assessment we can do. You can check the toxicity of the drugs. You can check the toxicity of your environmental pollutants and other things. And then, of course, drug discovery. Drug discovery is not a very small term. It's a comprehensive approach in which cell culture plays a major role. For example, if you are going to develop a drug against prostate cancer, and you have a library of, for say, 10,000 molecules, so you cannot test these 10,000 molecules in animal model. So we should use some cell-based screening. So we should take some cancer cells, we treat them with these molecules in a high throughput manner, and we can select some potential leads which are active against these cancer cells, and then we can select them based on their toxicity. So finally, maybe we will have 10 or 5 molecules which are safe and which can be used for the animal, and it will be easy to use animal model then after this selection. And then we cannot do too much manipulations inside the in vivo system to understand the basic mechanism of the disease. Here in cell culture, we can do n number of manipulations, and we can uh, understand the mechanism at the molecular or submolecular level. And then again, antibody production. We always use, as a biological researchers, the monoclonal antibody in our daily use. So this antibody production, cell culture is a main source for the monoclonal antibody production. Then we can make vaccines or antibiotics from the cell culture. So these are the basic uh, implications of the cell culture. So here are some example of cell culture, how we perform, how cell culture is being used in biomedical research, especially in drug discovery. This one is an example. Here, this is our publication. Here we screened around, if I remember, it's around 10,000 molecules, different pharmacological molecules in malaria parasite. It's also a cell culture. And then we cut short by there are some criteria that this particular compound has this activity, so we can select them. Then we again checked its toxicity in kidney cell lines, and then we calculated somehow the safety index. And then finally we got 2 molecules out of 10,000. We got 2 molecules. So you can imagine that 10,000 molecules, nobody will allow you to use a mouse model for 10,000 molecules. So cell culture plays an important role. So for 10,000, we got 2. And then we did some pharmacodynamics and some combinatorial approach. And then we tested in mouse, and one molecule we also tested in monkey model, and that was always good to have cell culture. And then again, toxicological approach, how this is just some examples what we did in our lab. So recently we have published that what are the toxicity and mutagenicity of exhaust from the different kind of engines, or different kind of fuel engines like gasoline or uh, uh, CNG or diesel engine. So here we first time we have shown that this soot particles from the different kind of engines, they have nephrotoxicity. Before that, it was believed that the toxicity generated by these particles mostly affect the lung. But this is the first study, I think, if I remember, that we have shown that this the kidney is the most vulnerable organ for environmental pollution from these type of fuels. So these things, I mean, I'm just telling you just to show that how the cell culture makes our life easy to understand the toxicity and other things. So before going into the details, and intricacies of the cell culture, we should know some common terminologies in what we use as a daily basis on cell culture. The first one is a medium. It's as we know, medium means it's appropriate growth supplement for the cells to propagate, to proliferate, and the conditioned medium. The conditioned medium is a different term. It's not generally the medium. It's the medium during the cell growth. What does it mean? During the cell growth means during the cell growth, cell produce n number of metabolites autocrine and paracrine secretions and other things. So this condition medium contains that constituents, and I'm not going to the details, but this condition medium we use for our some experiments. Then cell line. Cell line, we all know that it's a cell population to grow in artificial environment. Then cell revival. Revival means starting cell culture from frozen cells. So whenever we grow the cells, we keep some cells as cryopreserved in liquid nitrogen, and then we take out, and then we can propagate the new cell culture. But it's a tricky process. Revival is not so easy. It's also a tricky process. And then subculturing. Subculturing means splitting the cells to avoid overgrowth. And the trypsinization means it's basically used for the adherent cell. As we all know, trypsin is a proteolytic enzyme. So if the cell is adhered to the cell culture flask, if you want to remove it, to detach it, you use trypsin. It removes its attachment between the cell cell and the surface, and then you can do your experiment. Then coming to confluency. Confluency means the percentage of area occupied by the cell on the cell flask or plate. Then cryopreservation, as I told you during the revival. So if you grow the cells, you have to preserve it in liquid nitrogen in some specified media so that the cell will still alive for years. Now heat inactivation. So when you do cell culture, mostly we use serum as a supplement apart from the media. So the serum has complement system. So we know apart from humoral and cell-mediated immunity, we have another defense system which is present in serum, which is called complement system. So that complement system can hinder your cell growth. So we have to heat inactivate at, I think, 56 degrees for 30-40 minutes, and that it will inactivate the complement system. And then suspension culture, as the name suggests, it grows in the suspension, adherent. They adhere, they need some surface to adhere. Then anchorage dependent. Anchorage dependent is the cells will not grow unless attached to a surface. Then other terms like fibroblast, fibroblast-like cells, they are bipolar or multipolar and elongated. Epithelial cells, they are polygonal and they are regular dimension. And lymphoblast-like, they mostly spherical in shape and they mostly grow in suspension and they don't attach to the surface. Then 2D culture. 2D culture means what generally we see in cell culture flasks or dishes. That is 2D culture, two-dimensional. 3D means we grow the cells the cells grow in a three-dimensional form. So it may be spherical or something else. And how many types of cell culture are there? Cell culture may be divided. It's like a primary cell culture. You freshly isolate from the tissue source and use it for your experiment, and eventually they will die in few days. Then you again you can establish the cell line. So there are two types of cell lines. Finite, they have limited lifespan. They will grow for some passages, and after they will die. And then continuous cell. Continuous cell line, they are transformed or immortal. They were immortalized by introducing some viruses like SB40 or just prevent their telomere or you just induce some oncogenic event or you just stop the tumor suppressor gene. So there are several methods to immortalize the cells. So how generally we do primary cell culture? You just take tissue, whatever tissue, desired tissue like liver, kidney, spleen, and then dissect it with surgical apparatus, and then you can disaggregate by mechanical meaning you can homogenize them, or with the enzymatic degradation you can use some enzyme like collagenase, and then incubate them, and then change the media, and then you can purify your type of cell, which cell you want to take. Like you can do cell sorting, or you can use immunogenic beads to select. So what are the advantages and disadvantages? A proper cell line for our experiment. So there are several bases. It's not limited. I'm just giving some basic examples like type of study. So if you are doing, for say, pharmacokinetic study, so you need a special kind of cells, uh, uh, which is mainly for pharmacokinetic study, like COCO cells. You can use it. And if you want for drug efficacy, you need drug efficacy for say prostate cancer cells, so you need a prostate cancer cell. In prostate cancer cell also, if you need castration resistant prostate, you need a PC3. Or like if you need androgen dependent cell, you need LN cap or V cap cells, or so on. So you have to decide first that which kind of study you are going to perform, select particular type of cell. Then species, of course, which type of cell you are using, mouse, human, or rabbit. For example, if you are working on cancer, and if you want to learn that how the tumor microenvironment or the immune cells, they affect the tumor, so you should use the syngenic model. Means you should use mouse cells inside the mouse cell, not the xenograft. In xenograft, people use immunocompromised mice and then inject human cells to generate xenograft. That will not mimic or the real situation, because the immune cells are not taken into the consideration. So you should use a mouse cell line within the mouse to generate a tumor. That will be the best one for this kind of study. Then functional characteristics, some specific metabolism, if you want to explore, you should use that kind of cell. If you want to explore some specific kind of signaling, you should choose a cell line which has that particular kind of signaling. And then if you want to choose develop a drug for a drug resistance, so you should choose a cell line which has that particular kind of drug resistance, or maybe multi-drug resistance. So these things, before you start your experiment, you should choose these things properly. So, so I'm giving some example of cell selection. So it's just a specific protein overexpression. So we wanted to explore the role of a specific protein called SPINK1. SPINK1 is a protein, it's a trypsin inhibitor. So I'm not going into the details of the planned experiment. I'm just giving you a brief, just to make you understand that how to select the cells. So then we checked and SPINK1 in a colorectal cancer. So which dig the Oncomine database. It's available database for most of the cancer cells. So then we checked, and then we found that the VDR cell has the highest level of SPINK1 expression across all the colorectal cancer cells. Then what we did, then we confirmed it with the immunofluorescence. There are two cancer cell lines, COLO320 and VDR, and then we found that SPINK1 is overexpressed in VDR. not in Colo 320. Then again, we confirmed with the qPCR. And then we also wanted two particular kind of mutations in a colorectal setting with the SPINK1. And we found that, of course, these two mutations are found in VDR. So that means in this way, we can select the cells for our to fulfill our hypothesis. Again, one example of the drug resistance. If you want to develop a drug against drug resistance, you have to choose a cell with the drug resistance. For example, the castration-resistant prostate cancer is a big challenge for the scientific community. So recently, we have published that targeting NF-kappa B signaling by artesunate, a well-known antimalarial, to restore the sensitivity of castration resistance to anti-androgens. So for that reason, we have chosen PC3 cells, because the PC3 cells, they have this castration resistant, they mimic, they show the castration resistant prostate cancer type. So these kind of approach we have to follow while selecting the cells. Then coming to the most interesting part, which is stem cell research. It's a very promising and advanced scientific research area. I'll be giving it just brief because it's a very broad area. So just to make you understand that how cell culture is helping us in biomedical sciences and clinical sciences as well. So stem cells are, as you all know, it's a blank cell. They haven't differentiated yet, and they have ability to divide and to make infinite number of copies. And they can remain a stem cell, or they can differentiate in several other kind of cells like muscle cell, blood cell, etc. And there are some potential uses of stem cells. You can grow new cells in laboratory to replace a damaged organ or tissue, which is already going on. And then you can correct the parts of organ that doesn't work properly. And we can do research, we can dig the genetic defects in the cells. And then we can also do research how disease occur, what is the basic mechanism in a certain cell, to why the certain cells can develop into the cancerous cells. And then we can test new drugs for safety and their effectiveness. So I'm just giving a brief about how many types of stem cells are there. Embryonic stem cells, they obtain from in vitro fertilized 3 to 5 days old human embryo. So in vitro means they are not human embryos, they are in vitro fertilized. Then pluripotent, and then they are pluripotent. Pluripotent means these embryonic cells can make the whole human body except this embryo. Then non-embryonic or adult stem cells. So don't confuse with the adult. They are also found in kids, like kids and teenagers also. They have these kind of stem cells, and they come from the developed organ and tissue, and they are basically repairing and replacing the damaged tissue in the area where they are found. And they are not, they are multipotent, but they are not as much as, they cannot differentiate as much as the embryonic stem cell can differentiate. Then induced pluripotent stem cells, they are genetically reprogrammed. Adult stem cells to be have like embryonic stem cells. Huge research is going on, and it's a very hot area. I think few years back, the Japanese scientists got Nobel Prize on this kind of research. And then the cord blood stem cells and amniotic fluid stem cells, as the name suggested, they come from that sources. So how generally we do the stem cell culture? It's not like normal cell culture. So we use feeder cell. There are two kind of stem cell culture. One is feeder dependent and one is feeder non-dependent. So feeder means it's like nerve cell which can provide the nourishment to the your stem cells. So how generally it has been done. So we coat a gelatin on the lower surface of a cell culture feeder plate, and then we put the feeder cells. Like feeder cells are like mouse embryonic fibroblast or human foreskin fibroblast, and then allow them to settle down and to grow and to release some uh, growth supplements for stem cells. And then after that we put our stem cells on top of it, and then allow them to grow, and then we do the further processing. And then stem cell culture with feeder free. So in this case, we don't use feeder cells. In place of feeder cells, we use some growth supplements like essential amino acids and other nutrient elements and growth factors. So here we can manipulate a lot. In feeder cells, we cannot manipulate a lot. So which type of stem cell culture we should use? So basically it's context dependent, and based on the research and experiments, uh, it can be said that in some conditions the feeder system is good. In some conditions feeder free system is good. For example, the pluripotent iPSCs from postnatal tissues, the feeder dependent system is good, while in multipotent mm, uh, tumor stem cells or the feeder system is preferable. Now, until now, we have seen that everything is going good, and we have this application, we have that application, we can do this, we can do that, and number of things from the cell culture. But now here problem comes, and the problem is not so easy. It's a huge problem, and it's in a country like India, it's like, I can say it's like horrible sometimes. So it's called contamination and cross contamination. Contamination uh, is basically bacterial, fungal, or mycoplasma. Here you can appreciate that it's a normal cells growing in a cell culture plate. Here you can see a lot of bacteria around it. Here is the worst case, the fungal infection. Then mycoplasma, you can see mycoplasma is not very easy to distinguish between mycoplasma infected or the normal cells until it's like a huge infection by mycoplasma. And then cross contamination. Cross contamination means mixing of two cells. Here you can see this pattern is different, this pattern is different, but it's also not very easy to find by microscopy that it's a cross contamination. We will discuss one by one later. So how to reduce the bacterial contamination and fungal contamination? We have to be careful, extra cautious. We have to check every day our cells. It's not if you are going to lab and then yesterday only you splitted the cells and then you don't want to see them. No, if you are in the lab, go to just takes 2 minutes and then go and then check carefully your cells, everything is okay or not. And then you have to do random screening for contamination, like once in a month or twice in a month. You just take one drop of cell culture media or other supplies, and then use bacterial or fungal culture system to check whether everything is okay. You have to sterilize all the equipments and cell culture supply with 70% ethanol or heat decontamination, autoclaving, and filtering. Uh, and then always follow the cell culture facility manual. Never ever avoid, because if you avoid, everybody will suffer. And frequently check HEPA and line filter of the incubator. This is pretty much tricky. If you don't know, don't touch it. But if you and ask your supervisor or ask your engineer to come, because sometimes the line filters, you will see in incubators there are line filters and HEPA filters. If they have some problem, even you take all safety measures, the contamination will come. And fumigate the cell culture in the facility if you are getting frequent contamination, like basically in a country like India, mostly in June, July, August, during high humidity, you face this kind of problem. So fumigate it. So fumigation can be done with the potassium permanganate and formaldehyde, but always try to do the fumigation during the weekend, so that so that everybody will not suffer from the fumes. And there is a thumb rule: you have to throw if there is a bacterial confirmed bacterial or fungal contamination. You have to throw the cells if they are not very crucial. Like if they are crucial, like if you did 6-month experiments to get a single cell colony from a CRISPR, and then you have grown it, it takes 7-8 months, then maybe you should not throw and use some antimitotic. But I recommend please throw it, because it's sometimes it's all or none principle. If one cell flask is contaminated, it's most likely the whole cell facility will be contaminated. Then mycoplasma contamination. Mycoplasma contamination is very serious concern, because it's always ignored that, because during the observation under microscope you can find fungal contamination or bacterial contamination, but it's very hard to discriminate between mycoplasma contaminated cells and normal cells. So, and it affects the cell physiology and metabolism, but you never know, because it won't affect the cell growth. So it's always ignored. So we have to do random mycoplasma testing. Like whenever if you are reading a paper, a research paper with the cell culture, always it's written in material and method that this particular cell line was tested for mycoplasma before the experiment. So randomly, I think once in a month or in 2 months, you have to randomly check the mycoplasma contamination in your cells. How to check? So there are several methods, like you can check directly the growth on agar or specific DNA staining. You can do like host staining. You can do PCR, ELISA, RNA labeling, and other enzymatic procedures. But all these methods are not 100% perfect, so we can use a battery of these methods. Nowadays, some commercial kits are available to check mycoplasma within hours, so we can use that also. And mycoplasma are resistant to most of the antibiotics, and they cannot detect by easily turbidity. So as I told you, for other contaminations, you have to discard, you should discard the cells if they are not crucial. Or you can use some recommended drugs like quinoline or some combination of drugs to remove the mycoplasma. But again, I'm telling that as per my experience, it's better to throw the cells and start a new culture. So until now, we checked that there are problems with the bacteria, virus, and bacteria, fungus, and the mycoplasma. But here is the most serious problem, which is called cross-contamination. It's the worst situation in cell culture. Sometimes it can destroy your whole scientific career. Or say, if you are doing PhD, and for example, if you are working on a cell and you are working on a resistant mechanism, and you have a cell, you work 5 years, and suppose that is resistant to a particular drug, you wrote your thesis, you published your paper, and somehow you know that no, it was sensitive, not the resistant, because You took the right cell, but somehow it mixed with some sensitive cells, so your results are not reliable. So how it happened? It may be accidentally mixing of the two flasks. Uh, Means if labeling is removed and you took a cell line and then you used it like resistant, but it was sensitive. You took out a cell from liquid nitrogen and it's a wrong cell line. And other things like in cell culture, you are working with several kind of cells at a time, or accident transfer the bottle to one another. There are n number of reasons. So we should avoid this kind of mistakes. So how to detect the cross contamination? The only way to detect the cross contamination is STR profiling. STR means it's a short tandem repeats called microsatellites. Uh, they are 2 to 7 base pairs and they are distributed throughout the intronic region of the genome. And they are different in their nucleotide sequence as well as their number of repeats. Like if you say here, the STR1 for 3 different person and STR2 for the STR2 as well. Here you see 10, 14 and 5, 12, 7 and 10. Means the number of repeats are different in different individuals. So we can take this advantage and screen do profiling of the cell line and match with the original database of the cell line, and then we can say that yes, this particular cell line is PC3 22RE1 or this one is A549 or whatever. So if it's matched with the original one, that means it's there. If it's not, that means it's contaminated with something else. So what are the current available tools and technologies for cell quality? Because these cell therapies are very promising area. I don't know whether you have learned or not. There is a company in Israel. They recently developed uh, monoclonal antibodies uh, to treat COVID-19. So this is also a cell-based therapy. So during because cell-based therapy, we are dealing with the n number of cells and the n number of manipulations and etc. So there are more chances to get you know uh, wrong information or some misinterpretation of the data, or the cell quality is compromised. So there are several methods to check the cell quality and to make a perfect product. So as I told, STR analysis we can do for cell mixing, and then live cell imaging we can do through microscopy. I'm not going to the details of all because they are like a very huge uh, techniques. They are very sophisticated techniques. Uh, and then we can do real-time analysis uh, using electrodes, and then we can use flow cytometry, which is already uh, laser-based technology to sort to count the cells. Seahorse is a new technology by Agilent. It measures the basically it's for metabolic stress measurement. And then microarray analysis for gene expression. We can do next generation sequencing. We can do ELISA. So here it's not a conclusion, but for the conclusion of this seminar, it's like cell culture is bread and butter for biological science lab, and it has major clinical implications. We have to choose appropriate cells and media for our experiments. We have to avoid contamination and most importantly, cross contamination. I'm again telling you, cross contamination is the worst thing. You don't have to do this one, otherwise it will affect the whole lab, and it's worse condition. And then regularly we have to check the cell quality. So whatever I learned, whatever I delivered, I got all from my mentors, my colleagues, peers, and of course the funding agencies who supported me for my studies. So here's what Koshika does. They identify your requirements. They do expansion of the cells. They can deliver the cells whatever you need. They can do toxicological screening for you. They can do drug screening, can do disease modeling, and they can help you in basic research as well. And I'd like to thank you all for listening me, and you are invited to join the upcoming webinar by Dr. Ambarish. So thank you very much. Now it's open for your suggestion.
Thank you, Dr. Swaroop. It was really a very informative presentation. Well, I'm Dr. Sachin Kadam, CTO of Advances. I would like to thank all the viewers for attending this webinar. I'm sure our audience must have got the essence of cell culture and its application in the biotechnology. Information on problem faced during preparation or handling of primary cells and how to overcome these problems were really very, very informative in your presentation. One slide where you have given an example of specific protein overexpression, that could have really, help our audience to gain some insight, like, how cell culture can be really used for different applications. I'm sure this will give a glimpse of, cell culture and its application to our audience. What I could see from today's attendees that maximum are students in our audience, and I hope that they have gathered a very good knowledge on cell culture field, and your talk could have generated a good interest in these students, and they will look for cell culture as a branch of a career option. Well, again, I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Swaroop and all our beautiful audience for their participation in the first lecture in Koshika's webinar series. I request all the participants to fill the feedback form. The link will be shared to you on the chat room soon. So I request you to fill this feedback form, and your suggestions or your further feedback will help us to gain or to meet the requirement and expectations you have in our future lectures. Also, I request you to please register for the further lectures in these series. You will receive the notification about the same on your email too. And I thank you all again for attending this webinar, and thank you, Dr. Swaroop, for giving such a wonderful talk. Thank you so much. वो चल रहा है simultaneously. You have to do. Well, for audience, I have already posted a link for the feedback form. Please visit that link in Zoom webinar chat. The session is open for question and answers. We have tried answering many questions so far. There are, large number of questions audience have asked. We are trying to answer each one of them. Just to gain, just to have a live interaction, I would just speak out few questions, and Dr. Swaroop, if you can answer these questions. it will be great. So mainly people are very keen on how coronavirus or a COVID-19 can be, treated using cell culture. What are the possibilities of curing COVID-19 using cell culture? So this particular question is asked by many people. So if you can answer this question, it will be great. Dr. Swaroop.
Okay, so basically, whatever is going on, whatever research is going on for coronavirus, especially in the area of vaccine development or antibody development, it's all cell-based. Because whenever it's a virus, so whenever you want to develop a vaccine against virus, you need to propagate the virus and then uh, manipulate and then propagate the virus. So where to propagate? You have to propagate it inside the cell and then take out, and then we can use it as a immunogenic as a vaccine. So it's all cell culture except from the small molecule inhibitors, which are, for example, okay, let me explain in this way. There are two kinds of treatment management, you can say. One is prophylactic, one is therapeutic. So whatever prophylactic is going on, and at some extent therapeutic level, it's cell culture based, except small molecule inhibitors, which are again therapeutic. So after the disease, for the patient, corona patients, it's small molecules, or if it's antibody based therapy, it's again cell culture. So whatever we are developing, even small molecules or vaccine or antibodies, it's all cell culture assisted.
Okay, thank you. There is another question which is asked by many of the students, researchers, that how one can combine cell culture with bioinformatics, and it can be used for drug development or treating diseases like coronavirus. So, what is the actual way by means we can combine cell culture and bioinformatics?
So cell culture bioinformatics, they are common. This is common practice. So there are several ways to connect. Like recently, this company called Kaizen, they have developed a big platform. I'm forgetting the name. I have that subscription for that program. They have a huge profile of the cell-based research, and they put inside the cell-based research means starting from the signaling, from the inhibitors, everything, and they put this database inside their software. So whenever you want to explore, for say you are using cell line A, okay, and you want to connect its signaling with something else. So if you put that particular cell line, ask the query, it will give you the whole map that how you can proceed further, and then you can take that advantage, and then you come to the cell line based approach inside your lab. So in that way you can do your experiment.
Okay, thank you. There is another type of question people are asking, like, about the cancer research and cell culture. So how cancer research is associated with the cell culture, and how one can generate CRISPR knockout cell line using in suspension THP monocytes.
PHP monocytes I didn't work with, but I work, it's suspension culture, so they have maybe some specific protocols. I didn't work with it, but of course I did CRISPR-Cas knockout in adherent cell line, like I think it was A549 and Hex cells. And there may be some protocols, it's just different protocols. So uh, it can be done. And the other question, what you asked, I just missed it.
How you can associate associate cell culture with cancer research?
So as I already mentioned in my during my paper, the VDR cell line example, uh, we started from the VDR cell line, then we went to the xenograft model. So it's already cell based. Again, I gave an example of this NF-kappa B in prostate cancer. It's all cell based study.
Okay. Some basic question like how you can determine cells are growing happily and they are healthy in nature, and what is the difference between serum free and serum containing medium? How cells can grow differently in these different two medium?
Okay. So first of all, how cells are growing happily or not, it comes from the experience. Okay. But if the doubling time, but you have to know the doubling time and the pace. So it's like if they are not growing, if you put some cells and they remain at the same confluency until 3 or 4 days, if it's not the primary cells, that means they are not happy. Something is going wrong. Or if some bacterial contamination is going on, you will feel the media as a hazy, or cells start detaching if they are not happy, if they are basically adherent cells. So these kind of things come through the experience. So easily you can understand. And the serum-free media and with serum-free media means they don't have serum. So it's basically people use it for synchronization of the cells or some specific experiments. But for normal growing cells, you need serum. For example, some cells, if not serum, you have to provide some additional uh, growth factors like uh, for RWP cells for prostate cancer, you need pituitary extract. If you're not using serum, you are using pituitary extract. So this is the difference.
Okay, there is one interesting question asked by Mr. Ashutosh Singh. He's asking how to check whether the cell received from dealer contains contamination or not. Sometimes no turbidity is seen when we receive the cells. Doing PCR every time after receiving cells is not a method to check this. So how can we proceed with this?
Okay, so let them go. You propagate the cells. If they are propagating, don't trypsinize it. Take out the media. Of course, not all the time, but first time when if you want to check whether it's good, you have to do it. So if you are receiving a cell, revive it, and then take the media, then do analysis for media or some cells, and then do analysis for the mycoplasma, or you can just put in a Sevrod dextrose medium, you will find that whether fungus is growing. You can put in LV agar, you can find that whether the bacteria is growing. So you have to do it if you want to. So first time you do, and then randomly you have to check.
Okay, I think more or less these kind of questions have been asked by the audience, and we have tried almost to answer almost all of them. If not, we will try and answer them in the question answer series on Zoom itself. Regarding some people are asking whether we will be able to provide these recorded presentation. So yes, we will be sharing the link with you soon. So need not worry about the presentation. We will share the link with you. I think that is almost all what people have asked questions, and we have tried to answer them. So thank you, Dr. Swaroop, for taking time out and accepting our request to educate the students and scientist population on essentials of cell culture. Thank you so much, and I thank all the audience for their participation.
Thank you.